Well, that is it. Wild card weekend is over. Over. And I didn't get to watch Saturday's games because I had to work Saturday, and the Saturday night game was exclusively on Peacock, which was so stupid and so retarded. And now the Peacock game, what I've heard about it was a terrible broadcast and everything. So then the Sunday's games, I got to see them both. The Packers just destroyed the Cowboys and pulled so far the upset of this year's playoffs. 48-32. Did you see the Packers putting up 48 points against the Cowboys? I know I didn't. 48-32 was the final score there. And two of those touchdowns were pick sixes thrown by Dak Prescott. And right now, many people say, will Mike McCarthy get fired? Is Prescott seeing his last days as a Dallas Cowboy? I mean, it's like I've said, Dak Prescott always seems to play his best against weaker opponents and just can't get big wins. He can't win in the playoffs, and really there was no excuse. And I mean, and then the defense too. I mean, they gave up big plays. It's like there was no coverage on the field. A lot of good deep passes over the middle, and there was hardly a pass rush. I mean, Micah Parsons went ghost in that game. So now I think the Dallas Cowboys might have just seen the final days of Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. And then last night's game between the Detroit Lions and the LA Rams. You know, congratulations to the Detroit Lions winning your first playoff game in 32 years. When I was only a year and a half old, their last ever playoff win was the 91 NFC Divisional playoff game against Dallas, where they won 38-6 before they got blown out to the Redskins 41-10 in the NFC Championship game. And then after that, the 90s, that decade, they'd make the playoffs every other year. Then they would make it again in 93, where they lost to Green Bay, which was their last ever home playoff game. Then they lost 95 to the Eagles, 90 in that 57-31 blowout, 97 to the Buccaneers, and then 99 to Washington. And then they went for the next 11 seasons without making the playoffs. Because remember, when the 2000s came, they were the worst team of the decade. They only, from 2000 to 2010, they only got 48 victories. 42 of them during the 2000s decade. But what it was they hired Matt Millen as general manager. And Millen, he did a terrible job. I mean, terrible at drafting. It's like he drafted players who were not tough, like Joey Harrington, and drafted players who just had legal issues, like Charles Rogers, like Mike Williams. And he finally hit on some good guys like Calvin Johnson, but in all reality, the Lions that time period were just so bad. Then because of bad draft picks and constantly giving them drafting the same position, players who just had attitude and just didn't not have a professional kind of attitude. And then they had that 0-16 season. And they were 0-16. And then after they were 0-16, they would become playoff contenders under Matthew Stafford. They made the playoffs 3 years in the 2010s, in 2011, 14, and 16. But then they really kind of fell apart. And then 2021 came when Matthew Stafford demanded a trade. Matthew Stafford demanded to be traded. And they traded him to the LA Rams because the Rams believed they were in that Super Bowl window, but they just needed a better quarterback. So they traded him to the Rams. In return, the Lions got Jared Goff for the Rams. And 3 years ago, I said the Rams were stupid to make that decision. He's younger. Goff is younger than Stafford, and I thought Stafford was just beat up and torn up. But they proved me wrong when they went off and won the Super Bowl last year. In 2021. So in the short term, the Rams, they won that trade. But in the long term, it's the Lions. And they just showed it last night, beating the Rams 24-23. The Lions now are going to be in the divisional round for the first time since they beat the Cowboys in 91. And hey, you don't know what could happen. This team could become a Super Bowl contender. They could make it to the Super Bowl for all we know. They got Jared Goff. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have David Montgomery. They got Gibbs. They got a lot of players, great talented players that will make a great impact for this team, the Lions. So congratulations to them. And then today's games. I didn't get to watch the Bills-Steelers game because I had to work. But then the Bills won 31-17, so congratulations to the Bills. But then I got to see this night's game. Eagles came out as clear favorites, and that's who I had winning. You got the Eagles, who are a team that are getting up there in age. A team that have 3 potential Hall of Famers. They got a first ballot in Jason Kelly. They got a likely guy in Lane Johnson. And they got a potential Hall of Famer in Fletcher Cox. And you don't know the future of these guys. Could they have played their last game in Philadelphia? I think so. They could have probably played their last game with the Eagles. They could have done it. They could have played their last game with the Eagles. I know Kelsey and Cox maybe, but Johnson, I just know he's still got a few years left on his contract. And the question is Sirianni out as head coach of Philadelphia? The answer is we'll find out in the next coming days or maybe the next week. We might find out. But for the Buccaneers, one guy that has resurrected his career has been Baker Mayfield. A quarterback that, I was excited when he came in the NFL. Even though I love Hook'em. I love the Longhorns. But Baker Mayfield is just one of those guys that I really believed had a great chance. Was going to make something in the NFL. Sad to say, though, he just, he had conflict with the coaching staff in Cleveland. Then he had issues in Carolina. And then he played with the Rams. And now he's maybe found new life in Tampa Bay. He's on a 1-year deal and might be the future of this organization. Maybe he will, and maybe he won't be. But all I know is that the Buccaneers' 2023 season is not over yet. So we take a look at next week's playoff games. The first game will be on Saturday, as I am not going to be able to watch this game between the Texans and the Ravens. This one, I've been impressed with C.J. Stroud. The way they beat up the Browns 45-14 was just phenomenal. It was just fun to watch. It was just phenomenal. I didn't watch the game, but I did see highlights. But I think Stroud's rookie year, he has to have one of the best rookie years of all time. His rookie year is coming to an end today. Saturday, as I got the Ravens winning that game. Then I will probably miss maybe the first few minutes of the Saturday night game between the Niners and the Packers as I get off of work when the game begins. But in this game, as good as Jordan Love's first season was as Packers starting quarterback, is as good as I just think it's going to be coming to an end next on Saturday night in San Francisco against the 49ers. Because the 49ers, I think, are the most complete team in the NFL. They got the defense, and they got an offense with Brock Purdy, who's playing pretty well, pretty outstanding as a quarterback. Then you throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey. You hand the ball off to him. You put him in the passing game. He's just phenomenal. Then you got elite receivers like Deebo Samuel, like Brandon Ayuk, and an offensive line that's so phenomenal. I got the 49ers winning that game. Then we got Sunday's game, the first game between Tampa Bay and Detroit. I'm going for Detroit. Detroit's at home again. They could win another playoff game. Like I said, you got the talent. You got the players ready to go out there and make and bring hope to this city. And then you got the NFC. And then I just think that as good as the Buccaneers season has been this year, a great story. I think it comes to an end. And then the AFC game between Buffalo and Kansas City, I say it's Buffalo. They've had Kansas City's number the last several years. From 2021 to now, they lead the series. The 3-1 against Kansas City, the only loss being that infamous 13 seconds playoff game 2 years ago. Could we see another shootout like that? Because at the end of the day, I see Detroit and San Francisco in the NFC Championship game, and Buffalo and Baltimore for the AFC Championship game. So let me know your predictions in the comments section below.